seriousness, what do you think about this first little section? I mean, it's not as though Egri just set out to murder trees, and let's throw in this little section. Here's a page. Go have fun with it. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I think even though it is such a short chapter, I think it is important to at least focus at least a page or two of its own chapter on this idea of origin of action, where there is always something that will cause somebody or something to perform an action. You light a stick of dynamite. There's got to be a reason why you're doing that. If you're a miner,
or if you're
Tourette's.
Ah! Ah! Sorry, I was just yelling. Like I had Tourette's, I do spontaneous things. Does that have an origin? I guess it would be Tourette's itself, wouldn't it?
Right.
See, I defeated my own purpose.
No. But I mean, every single thing has some sort of reason for it to...
But in all seriousness, Doug, there are some things, even despite what Egri says, that make you sit back and go, where the did that come from?
Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Oppan Gangnam.
Right.
Well. On to...
right, yes.
Section...
Books. Reading.
2.
Right.
So, cause and effect. Section 2 of this chapter. Starts out with a scenario that Egri gives us about a...
man whose nose is punched and then it hurts.
Or a man who asks a woman out on a date.
That too.
But,
then she punches him in the nose.
No. But there is the part where he talks about, with great trepidation, you invite her to see a show with you. She accepts. There is nothing wrong in this. Nothing unusual, yet it may be a turning point in your life. So even the most innocuous of things can serve as a sort of turning point for crazy conflicts later down the road for a given story or drama.
And it's nice that he sets it up in this chain. Like, he shows us how this moment will later escalate into something much, much, much worse.
Right.
And it makes logical sense. I mean, one might argue that, ditching the girl because you don't have a suit is a little silly. I mean, that might be... But if you're the right kind of person, and your image is important to you, and you don't think it's going to work, then that makes sense. It's not like he asks the girl out on a date, and then he goes and robs a bank, or blows up a bridge, or becomes a superhero and punches sharks through buildings for a living. I mean, it's gradual, and that's what makes it kind of work, So,
something else.
It's really
big in this chapter. On 135, or actually, it starts at 134. If you are sufficiently aroused, you will make a decision, and this decision will set in motion forces to thwart itself, foreshadowing a counteraction which will oppose you. And just that idea of these forces set to thwart itself. It's like this weird antibody trying to take care of something that you're trying to accomplish.
I'm aroused. I'm going to make a decision on your antibody. Not really. That would be pretty gay.
Section 3, static.
Could have cut the static there, but it feels nice making it from the throat. Doing it yourself. Very visceral. But that's nothing to do with characters. Static characters are boring and tend to not go anywhere. Exactly. So, what did you think of this chapter, Doug? I seem to enjoy asking you that question, so I'll do it once again.
Well, just starting off on 143, Egri tells us, you cannot expect a rising conflict from a man who wants nothing or does not know what he wants.
You know what I'm reminded of?
Who that?
The buzzards in the Jungle Book. So what do you want to do? Well, I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, I don't know. What do you want to do? They don't do anything. They just sit there. And it's kind of funny.
Sounds similar to the dialogue on 144.
Oh my gosh, that sample dialogue. I hope
Painful.
that's a sample dialogue. If that's ever in a play anywhere, we need to find the playwright, tie him to railroad tracks, and force him to listen to Justin Bieber until that train mercifully slices him in half. Or something like that, because that's bad.
You don't have the Bieber fever?
No, I got inoculated by, good music and stuff. But regardless, this stuff, it is bad, because it's two characters who just sit there not making a decision.
Right.
It's like when you have a bunch of friends and you ask, where do you want to eat? And everyone's like, I don't care, it's cool, we can eat wherever. Mm-hmm. Nothing happens, nothing gets done, and it's frustrating and annoying.
And just completely uninteresting.
Yeah, exactly. Unless someone busts out a fist fight over McDonald's versus BK or whatever. Right. That'd be interesting. That creepy Burger King Stalker King versus Ronald McDonald in a SmackDown. I'd pay to see that.
I like the King, though. That's mainly because I hate clowns. But
Have you played that Xbox game? That is creepy.
I kind of want to play that.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. But I thought it was really interesting the way that they define static characters. It's nothing about the way that the characters are built. Right. It's nothing to do with the character's personality. As we've kind of seen, even characters that have sort of a dull personality can move a conflict along. Like, Lester? No. What was his name? Jeter Lester. Yeah. He moved the story along because he refused to act, not because, he acted in a boring manner. Right. So I thought that was kind of cool, how it's the decision in the dialogue rather than anything about the way the character is built.
Something else that was pretty interesting that Egri brought up was the idea that conflict is sort of this domino effect where only conflict can generate more conflict. That's found on 143. But yeah, just this idea that, dialogue can't really generate conflict.
Yeah, and even says that, like, even the best dialogue cannot save a play where there is no conflict. And that kind of ties back into the earlier sections we've been reading, surprise, surprise, repetition, on, chain reactions, on orchestration, on building a series of events, rather than relying on one character or one moment to carry your whole play, which is really phenomenally good advice and very easy to forget.
There was an interesting bit. Yes. When he starts talking about that static play, Idiot's Delight, and he tells us what the premise is. The premise is, do armament manufacturers stir up trouble in war? The author's answer is yes. And just this idea that the premise, there is this like link between the premise and just the idea of static plot. Like, the premise is unfortunate, it is superficial. So this idea that a superficial premise might actually lead your play to be essentially static.
Right, because he goes in and talks about the details there. Sure, gun manufacturers and what have you do cause conflict, but in order for that conflict to even be viable, in order for them to have business whatsoever, there have to be certain socio-political, or economic tensions that are going to lead to a country that wants to buy weapons, thus starting the war. Yeah. So it falls flat on its face before it's even got out of the gate. And I don't know that play, so knowing its premise is really interesting.
I'm kind of intrigued to watch it, even though it probably sounds like it would be painful.
Sounds like it would be a snooze fest, but an enlightening snooze fest.
I mean, I believe Egri himself even says this is an example of how not to write that.
Don't do this; it will suck.
Which hearing that was, I think, Egri at his most cattiest.
Most cattiest. Well played, English major. Well played.
Baby, 나는 뭘좀 아는 You know what I'm saying? 오빤 강남 스타일. Sexy lady. 오빤 강남 스타일. Sexy lady. 오빤 강남 스타일.